Flight attendant throws black woman's bag in the trash. One call later, the entire crew is fired. The sound of the designer bag hitting the bottom of the trash bin echoed louder than it should have on a plane. Passengers in first class went silent, their heads turning in disbelief. Standing frozen just outside seat 2A, Simone Everett stared at the trash can as if it had just swallowed something sacred. It had. Her grandmother's leather tote, hand-stitched, honey brown, and worn in the most dignified way, now sat among coffee stirrers, crumpled napkins, and airline food wrappers, tossed aside like junk. "Ma'am," said the flight attendant, her voice sharp, entitled, "your bag didn't meet FAA regulation. I made the call." Her name tag read Chloe, mid-30s, platinum blonde, every word laced with the kind of politeness that cut deeper than open hostility. Simone blinked slowly, the anger simmering beneath her calm exterior. She took a breath through her nose and exhaled carefully. Every muscle in her body begged her to speak up, but instead she reached into her blazer pocket, pulled out her phone, and tapped once. Just once. "Is that really necessary?" asked a man across the aisle in seat 2B. His voice carried the same condescension as Chloe's. "It's just a bag." "No," Simone said quietly, not even looking at him. "It's not." The tension in the cabin tightened. People didn't know what to do. Was this just a small incident, a misunderstanding, or something worse? Simone returned to her seat without another word, as if nothing had happened. But something had, and something was coming. 4 hours earlier, Simone Everett had arrived at JFK's Terminal 4 with the poise of a woman who had done this 1,000 times before. Because she had. From the tailored navy blazer to the polished Oxford heels, Simone moved like someone who didn't need to prove anything to anyone. But still, she felt the stare. The kind people pretended not to give but gave anyway. TSA agents scanning her twice, gate agents double-checking her ticket. As if black skin in first class was an error the system hadn't yet corrected. "Good morning, ma'am. Are you sure this is your ticket?" the young gate attendant asked, brows furrowed. Simone smiled politely. "Unless there's another Simone Everett headed to LAX in seat 2A, yes, I'm sure." The attendant's smile was stiff as he handed her the boarding pass, already regretting the question. Inside the jet bridge, she passed by another flight attendant, tall, wiry, early 30s, male. Name tag, Matt. He looked her up and down before forcing a grin. "Welcome aboard." "Thank you." She settled into 2A. The cabin smelled faintly of citrus and bleach. A businessman across the aisle gave her a once-over. An older white woman, already sipping sparkling wine, barely concealed her disapproval. That was when Chloe approached. "I'll store your bag up front," she said, reaching without asking. Simone instinctively pulled back. "It has medication," Simone said evenly. "I prefer to keep it with me." Chloe's lips thinned. "Ma'am, we can't allow large bags at your feet in first class. I'll take care of it." "I fly often," Simone replied. "This bag has never been an issue." Chloe leaned in slightly, her tone dripping with faux empathy. "Well, on my flight, we do things by the book." Before Simone could respond, Chloe yanked the tote from her hands and disappeared toward the galley. Simone stood halfway from her seat, but then paused. Eyes followed her. It wasn't just about a bag, not really. She sat down slowly. The bag didn't return. Now, mid-air and hours later, Simone sat still, legs crossed, fingers tapping lightly on the seat's leather armrest. The hum of the engines, the clicking of soda cans opening, the chatter of passengers. It all blurred around her. Chloe passed by again, smiling like nothing had happened. "Anything to drink, Miss Everett?" "I'm good," Simone replied without inflection. "You sure? I can make you something special." Simone looked her dead in the eye. I don't trust what you serve. Chloe's smile faltered just a beat. Excuse me? I said, Simone repeated, her voice firm, I don't trust what you serve. Matt, from the front galley, caught the exchange and chuckled under his breath. This was entertainment to them. A black woman they could patronize, discredit, undermine. Simone turned to the window. Clouds floated peacefully outside, the world below oblivious to the storm inside this cabin. And then her watch vibrated once. Encrypted message received. She read it silently. Surveillance confirmed. Protocol cleared. She smiled faintly and reached up to ring the attendant call button. From the cockpit, Captain Rowley had just received an unusual communication through a secure airline channel. His co-pilot looked puzzled. You ever seen something called Protocol 19? Rowley shook his head. Never. But it's tagged high level and flagged for compliance. What's it say? He read aloud. Do not interfere. Proceed with flight. Upon landing at LAX, remain on tarmac. Federal inspection team inbound. No communication with media. The co-pilot blinked. You think it's a bomb threat? No, the captain muttered. This sounds way more political. Back in the cabin, Tasha, the youngest attendant on the crew, leaned toward the trash bin near the galley. She'd seen it earlier. The bag, expensive leather, still intact. And something inside it shimmered, an ID badge? She leaned closer, discreetly opened the zipper. Her breath caught. No way. She stepped back fast, heart pounding, trying to process what she just saw. She didn't say anything. But suddenly she knew exactly who Simone Everett was, and more importantly, she knew what was about to happen. The jet landed smoothly on the LAX tarmac just after 2:10 p.m., but no one in first class moved. The seatbelt sign had gone off. The usual scramble to grab bags and phones hadn't happened. Instead, there was an eerie stillness, like the air had shifted. Outside the plane windows, 2 black SUVs were already parked near the aircraft stairs. An unmarked white van with tinted windows pulled up behind them. It didn't look like catering. It didn't look like airport maintenance either. Simone Everett didn't need to look twice. She already knew. She sat calmly in her seat, hands folded in her lap, while Chloe paced near the galley, fidgeting with her collar. Why aren't we pulling to the gate? She asked aloud, mostly to herself but loud enough for others to hear. This is unusual. Captain Rowley's voice came over the intercom. It was even and practiced, but it held a tremor buried deep under the surface. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We've been instructed to hold position here on the tarmac for an unplanned inspection. We ask for your patience and cooperation. Inspection? Chloe repeated, glancing at Matt. Since when do they inspect planes at LAX? Matt shrugged, but his eyes had gone glassy. The kind of blank panic that sets in when you know something big just happened, but have no idea what. Passengers began murmuring. In seat 2B, the businessman who'd scoffed earlier tapped his phone, frustrated. I've got a board meeting in an hour. What kind of airline is this? Simone turned slightly, just enough for her eyes to meet his. You might want to reschedule. What? She didn't respond. Outside, figures in navy windbreakers with white block letters began to step out of the SUVs. A few carried clipboards, some had earpieces. One man at the front held a tablet and a case that looked military grade. Tasha, the youngest flight attendant, had positioned herself at the back of the cabin. She looked visibly shaken now. Her hands trembled as she clutched a napkin. Matt leaned toward Chloe and whispered, You think it's a drug thing? Or a bomb? I don't know, Chloe hissed back, but something's wrong, very wrong. What did you do? Tasha's voice cracked from behind. Chloe turned defensive. Excuse me? Tasha didn't step forward. She stood near the emergency exit, as if wanting to run but knowing better. That bag, the one you threw away. What about it? Tasha's voice was barely above a whisper. I opened it. Chloe's mouth twisted. You're not supposed to— No. You don't get it, Tasha said, her eyes wide with dawning horror. Her ID, I saw it. She's not who you think she is. Chloe blinked. What are you even talking about? Tasha stepped back, lowering her voice even more. She's not just a passenger. She's with the Department of Justice, and not just some agent. She's high level. Chloe stared at her, pale now. No, that's impossible. I checked her ticket. She was booked like anyone else. Yeah, Tasha said, her voice catching. Exactly. The cabin door opened. 2 federal officers stepped in, no guns drawn, but the authority in their posture made the air turn cold. Flight crew, one said without introduction, please remain where you are. We're here under direct orders from the U.S. Department of Transportation and the DOJ's Civil Rights Division. Passengers gasped. Simone didn't move. The officer continued. We have documentation indicating possible civil rights violations aboard this flight. All on-board communications, cabin camera footage, and crew actions are now under review. Matt blurted out, Wait, what is this? We didn't do anything illegal. Simone finally stood. Her voice sliced through the confusion. I'll take it from here. The officers immediately nodded and stepped aside. Chloe's face went ghost white. Why are they listening to her? Simone reached into the inside pocket of her blazer and pulled out the same ID Tasha had glimpsed. The gold-trimmed badge gleamed in the sunlight, streaking through the window. Simone Everett, Senior Federal Investigator, U.S. Department of Justice, Civil Aviation Oversight Division. Gasps exploded around the cabin. You work for the DOJ? Matt stammered. Chloe's voice cracked. This is a setup. She didn't say anything. She pretended to be a normal passenger. Simone turned slowly toward her. I gave you every chance. I didn't hide who I was. I just didn't announce it. You made assumptions. You made choices. Now comes accountability. But it was just a bag, Chloe whispered. No, Simone said quietly. It was how you treated me. Like I didn't belong. Like I wasn't worth listening to. Like my presence offended your sense of order. One of the federal agents stepped forward, handing Chloe a sealed envelope. This is your immediate suspension notice. As of now, you are under formal investigation for racial misconduct and passenger mistreatment. Matt's jaw dropped as another envelope was handed to him. This has to be a joke, he muttered. Simone turned to Tasha. Thank you for your honesty. Tasha nodded, eyes glassy. Passengers stared in stunned silence. Some pulled out phones, though the agents discouraged filming. Simone turned back to Chloe, who looked like she'd just stepped into her own nightmare. You think power only looks one way, Simone said. You thought I was just another woman you could push around. But power can wear pearls and denim, just like it can wear badges. And sometimes it's quiet, until it speaks. Chloe opened her mouth but said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Outside, the media had begun to gather beyond the tarmac fences. Someone had leaked the inspection. Live vans rolled in. The airline's comms team would be in full damage control within the hour. But inside the aircraft, the real message had already landed. No one said a word as Simone walked calmly off the plane, badge tucked away, chin held high, and legacy restored. The flight had ended, but the real turbulence was just beginning. Simone Everett stood behind the tinted windows of an airport conference room as a dozen airline executives and federal observers shuffled into place. The low hum of voices, the shuffle of polished shoes on laminate floor, the occasional rustle of paper. None of it fazed her. Her calm was a practiced one. Years of field work, cross-examinations, and high-stakes investigations had taught her to read a room before she spoke. But this wasn't just another policy meeting. This wasn't a debrief. This was war. Across from her sat William Garrison, Vice President of In-Flight Operations for Monarch Skies. Next to him was a legal advisor, a crisis management officer, and two reps from HR, faces pale and jaws clenched. No one made eye contact for more than a second. "Before we begin," Simone said evenly, "I want to make something very clear. I am not here to destroy your airline. I am here to expose a systemic failure, one that you have enabled." Garrison cleared his throat, trying to maintain his composure. "Ms. Everett. Agent Everett," she corrected. He paused. "Agent Everett, we are, of course, deeply disturbed by the situation on Flight 227. But before we jump to conclusions, I believe we owe our crew members the benefit of context." Simone walked to the end of the room where a flat-screen monitor had been mounted on the wall. With a single click on her tablet, the screen flickered to life. It displayed a paused security video from the jet's internal cabin camera. Frame by frame, it showed Chloe throwing Simone's bag into the trash compartment, her face filled with disgust, lips curling as she muttered something inaudible. "Context?" Simone asked. "Let's add audio." She tapped again. Chloe's voice crackled over the speakers. "People like her always think they're entitled. Ma'am, this isn't spirit. Try coach next time." There was a sharp intake of breath from the HR rep. One of the observers winced. Simone let it hang in the air. "Still want to talk about context?" she asked. Garrison looked rattled. Of course this isn't acceptable, but we don't train for every personality conflict that might arise mid-flight." Simone turned. "That wasn't a conflict. That was an act of racial hostility, compounded by her authority as a crew member. It violated both DOT policies and federal discrimination statutes. Your training didn't fail. Your hiring standards did." One of the legal officers spoke up. "What is it exactly that you're asking us to do?" "Accountability," Simone said. "Not just for the crew, for the culture." The room went silent. Simone let it linger before speaking again. "And full cooperation with the DOJ's inquiry, including access to all internal crew evaluations, passenger complaint logs from the past 24 months, and hiring audits." "That could open us up to liability," Garrison said slowly. "You already are," she replied. Outside the room, a knock at the glass startled them all. A young assistant stepped in, holding a manila envelope. "For Agent Everett, from Washington." She opened it and scanned the contents quickly. Then she looked up, sharper now, voice like flint. "Well, looks like Chloe Avery had 3 prior passenger complaints filed for similar behavior. 2 were quietly settled. The 3rd never reached legal review because the passenger withdrew it after being offered a travel credit and a handwritten apology." Garrison's face flushed. "We didn't know that." "You did," Simone Simai snapped. "You just didn't care." She paused. "Until now." Back at the airport bar, Chloe sat with Matt, slumped on stools that hadn't seen cushion replacements in years. Their uniforms had been stripped of badges. They were grounded. For now. "This is insane," Matt muttered. "I've flown for 12 years, never even had a write-up." "You think I meant to cause all this?" Chloe asked, her voice cracking. "It was just a stupid bag. She didn't look like anyone important." "You mean she didn't look rich enough?" he said under his breath. Chloe froze. "What did you say?" "You heard me." He looked at her, really looked, for the first time in years. "I've watched you sneer at people who didn't look like they fit your picture of what first class should be. Not just her. Anyone. You treat people like baggage." She stood up, defensive. "I'm not racist." He didn't say anything. She lowered her voice. I was raised to respect people. But when someone gets loud, when they act entitled, you threw away her personal belongings. Chloe gritted her teeth. Do you know what it's like being a woman in this job? Always walking on eggshells, always being judged. Matt looked away. Yeah, but you judged her, and now it's all coming down on us. Meanwhile, Simone met with a young black woman named Alicia, the passenger in seat 6C, who had witnessed the entire altercation. Alicia was visibly nervous but determined. I saw what she did, but I thought, you'd take care of it yourself. I didn't realize you were who you are. I'm just someone with a platform, Simone said. But you're someone with a voice. Alicia blinked. You're going to be subpoenaed. Subpoenaed, Simone continued gently. They might try to discredit you, make you feel small, but you're not. Your account matters. Alicia nodded, swallowing hard. I'll speak. And just like that, Simone smiled, not out of satisfaction, but hope. Because justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about courage. And it was spreading. The press conference room at the Department of Transportation in Washington, D.C. was packed. Cameras blinked under fluorescent lights. Microphones bristled on the podium like a patch of steel weeds. And behind the curtain, Simone Everett stood still as a statue, scanning her phone. The headline had already hit every major news outlet. Flight attendant tosses black woman's bag. Entire crew suspended pending investigation. But what they didn't know, what was about to break, was who Simone really was. A tap on her shoulder made her glance back. It was Deputy Director Alan Strauss. You sure you want to do this publicly? He asked. She looked at him, her tone even. They started this in public. I'll finish it the same way. Meanwhile, at Monarch Sky's internal HR division in Dallas, Chloe Avery sat at the end of a long table flanked by her union rep. Her face was tight, arms crossed. Across from her sat a panel of company executives, none of whom looked particularly sympathetic. Ms. Avery, said Marlene Cho, Director of HR Compliance, we've now received written complaints from 3 other passengers, 2 of whom corroborated Agent Everett's account. Another has filed a civil suit. Chloe scoffed. I'm being made a scapegoat. This is all politics. You disposed of a passenger's personal belongings, Marlene said sharply, while calling her names. Your behavior is documented. She was provoking me, Marlene paused. You realize she was a high-ranking federal investigator, right? Chloe blinked. The room seemed to tilt. Wait, what? She wasn't just a passenger, Marlene replied. She's the head of an independent task force investigating racial bias in transportation sectors, including commercial aviation. Chloe paled. Nobody told me that. That's the point, Marlene said. You treated her like she didn't matter. Now the entire industry's watching. At that very moment, in a modest brick house in Newark, New Jersey, Simone's younger brother Elijah sat glued to the television. Their mother, Bernice, sat beside him on the couch, a folded church bulletin still in her lap. When Simone stepped out onto the stage, Elijah's jaw dropped. She's really doing it, he whispered. Bernice smiled softly. She always does. Simone approached the podium, adjusted the mic, and spoke with a quiet authority. My name is Simone Everett. I'm a former assistant U.S. attorney, current federal liaison to the Department of Transportation's Office of Civil Rights, and lead investigator for bias-based misconduct in airline operations. The room fell completely silent. She continued. What happened aboard Flight 227 was not an isolated incident. It is part of a broader pattern, one that has allowed implicit bias and discriminatory treatment to go unchecked in our skies for too long. Simone clicked her remote, and behind her a screen showed data, charts, complaint patterns, names of airlines. Since January of last year, over 140 complaints have been filed citing differential treatment based on race or ethnicity in first and business class cabins. Only 5 led to crew reassignment. None led to systemic reform. The reporters scribbled frantically. Questions formed on lips. And for every passenger with power or status, Simone said, there are 1,000 more who walk off planes humiliated, invisible, and unheard. She paused, her voice softening. I chose not to disclose my identity during the flight, not because I was hiding, but because I wanted to see firsthand what happens when you have no badge, no title, no shield. What happens when you're just another black woman trying to fly home? Cameras flashed. But I'm not invisible, and neither is anyone else who's been mistreated. The applause didn't erupt. It built, quiet, then rising. Not everyone in the room agreed with her message, but they couldn't deny its weight. Later that night, back at the hotel, Simone stood on her balcony looking out over the city. Her phone buzzed, a text from Elijah. You shook the system. Proud of you. She smiled faintly. Then her screen lit up with a new notification. Confidential memo. Internal whistleblower report from Monarch employee. She opened it. The message was short, typed anonymously. This wasn't the first time Chloe Avery targeted a passenger. Internal reports were buried. Some managers told us not to log complaints if they were minor, names redacted in system. Someone higher up is protecting her. Simone's smile vanished. The rabbit hole just got deeper. She opened her laptop, connected to the DOJ server, and began logging the file. This wasn't just about a rude flight attendant. It was a system built to cover for them. And now it was her job to tear that system down. Simone sat alone in her hotel room, the blue light of her laptop casting shadows across her face. The whistleblower report was open in front of her, but it wasn't just the contents that unsettled her, it was the tone. The fear in the anonymous message leapt off the screen. She had spent years unraveling corruption at the federal level, but this was different. This was systemic rot, hidden behind smiling flight attendants and polished uniforms, and she had just poked a hole in a dam. Her phone buzzed, a call from a blocked number. She hesitated, then picked up. Everett, she said. A male voice answered, low and rushed. I don't have much time. I work in internal ops at Monarch Skies. What happened to you? It wasn't random. Simone sat upright. What do you mean? Chloe Avery didn't act on impulse. She's been protected. She's part of what we call the red file list. It's unofficial, but it exists. High-value passengers flagged based on internal bias criteria. Simone's breath caught. You're saying they've been profiling passengers? Worse. There's a list that gets circulated unofficially, coded comments from flight leads, supervisors. Some of us were told to stay alert when passengers like you boarded. Not for safety, for appearance. It's about optics, not risk. Simone was silent. The man continued. I have copies. I'll send them, but you didn't hear this from me. Click. The line went dead. She stared at the phone, anger bubbling. A profile list? On black passengers? Suddenly, it wasn't just about her bag. It was about every name on that list. At Monarch Skies headquarters, the fallout had begun. Chloe Avery was suspended without pay. Several other crew members were being questioned, but behind closed doors, the real damage control was underway. Back in New York, Simone walked through the halls of a modest legal aid office in Brooklyn. She had asked to meet someone important face to face. The receptionist nodded her in. Inside, an older woman stood up from behind a desk, cluttered with case files. Miss Everett, she said, extending a hand. I'm Vanessa Reynolds. I filed the complaint against Monarch last year, the one that disappeared. Simone sat across from her. I read your statement. They refused to seat you in first class despite your valid boarding pass, then claimed it was overbooked. Vanessa nodded. But then I saw 2 white passengers upgraded. I asked questions and the gate agent said I was being combative. Next thing I knew, I was escorted out. Simone's jaw tightened. And no one followed up, Vanessa added. They closed the case. Simone opened her bag and handed over a printed screenshot. Vanessa squinted at the text. It was a file code. 407 BK. You were tagged, Simone said. The RF prefix matches the whistleblower's report. You were labeled risk factor. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears, not because she was surprised, but because the proof finally existed. I knew it wasn't in my head, she whispered. It never was, Simone replied. That night, Simone stood once again in front of the camera, this time for an exclusive interview on national TV. The interviewer leaned in. Ms. Everett, is it true you're investigating racial profiling within airline systems? Simone didn't flinch. Yes, and we now have internal evidence that suggests intentional targeting of passengers based on appearance, socioeconomic assumptions, and race. The interviewer raised an eyebrow. Do you believe this is isolated to Monarch skies? Simone paused. I think it's bigger than one airline. I think we're finally seeing the cracks in a system that's been broken for a long time. Behind the scenes, a Monarch Skies PR advisor watched the broadcast from a hotel bar, his face pale. He grabbed his phone and texted, She's going public. We need to bury the red file. Now. But it was too late. Simone already had what she needed, and the system wasn't ready for what came next. The air in the Justice Department conference room felt thick with anticipation. Simone sat at the head of the polished oak table, a stack of evidence folders in front of her and a large digital display showing the subject of today's internal hearing. Monarch Skies, Systemic Profiling and Passenger Discrimination. To her right sat U.S. Attorney David Cormack, his face unreadable. To her left, Civil Rights Counsel Elena Vance tapped her pen slowly, watching the room fill. And across the table, sitting stiffly in tailored navy suits, were Monarch Skies legal reps, tight-lipped, cornered, and visibly rattled. Simone cleared her throat. We've now collected over 40 testimonies from passengers across 13 states. Their stories vary, but the pattern is unmistakable. Racial bias, targeted mistreatment, deliberate data manipulation, and the now confirmed red file list. Cormack interjected. You're asserting that Monarch Skies operated a clandestine internal profiling system for over 3 years? 4, Simone corrected calmly. Based on internal documents and encrypted communications we recovered, one of those documents, she slid a folder forward, contains flight attendant Chloe Avery's direct messages to other crew members using code words to label passengers. Words like non-compliant, optics risk, and flag on arrival. The Monarch legal counsel shifted. Their lead attorney, Miles Garrett, reached forward. With respect, Miss Everett, this feels more like a crusade than an investigation. These are isolated behaviors. Chloe Avery no longer works for us. Simone leaned forward. This isn't about Chloe. She was just a pawn. But your leadership, enabled this. Garrett started to object, but Cormack raised a hand. Simone opened a manila envelope and produced a printed copy of a flight crew chat log. She began to read aloud. Seat 1A, nonverbal, black female, designer bag. Probably flexing. If she gets fussy, trash it, teach a lesson. Sent by Avery. Approved with a thumbs-up emoji by your Regional Director of In-Flight Service, Cynthia Reed. time-stamped 2 hours before I boarded Flight 226. Dead silence. Cormac stared down at the page. "And you're certain that was you in seat 1A? Simone nodded. "Yes, and the bag they tossed had an encrypted flash drive in a side pocket, one I was transporting for an unrelated federal case. The potential compromise of that data alone could qualify as obstruction of justice." Garrett's face blanched. That wasn't in the original report. "Because I didn't file one," Simone said. "I knew you'd bury it. Instead, I traced everything back through your own system, quietly, and I wasn't alone." The door opened. A young woman in a gray suit stepped in, holding a USB stick. "Who is this?" Garrett asked. "My tech analyst," Simone said. "She decrypted your Slack backups. What she found was illuminating." Simone inserted the drive into the projector. The screen flashed up a spreadsheet labeled RF Master Roster. Names, descriptions, racial markers, behavioral tags. Cormac's jaw clenched. "This isn't just discrimination," he muttered. "It's a violation of federal civil rights laws, interstate commerce statutes, possibly even conspiracy." Garrett stood. "I need to make a call." Simone didn't look at him. She looked at the names on that screen, hundreds of them, people who had no idea they were being monitored, categorized, judged. Later that evening, in a dim office at Monarch Sky's HQ, CEO Randall Mercer poured 2 fingers of scotch and stared out at the city skyline. He'd gotten the call 2 hours ago. The Department of Justice was launching a formal civil rights investigation. Federal subpoenas would follow. The press had gotten wind of the hearing, and social media was already on fire. That red file list was trending nationwide. He was about to lose everything. His COO, Paige Langston, entered the room quietly. "It's over, isn't it?" she asked. "Not yet," he muttered, "but it will be. She was smart. She let us dig our own grave." "You mean Everett?" Randall turned slowly. "I mean the woman we underestimated, the one who kept her badge in her back pocket until it mattered." He sat down heavily. "Get PR ready. We're going to need to throw some people under the bus." "Who?" "Everyone." Meanwhile, Simone walked through a quiet Brooklyn street. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Vanessa Reynolds. "Just saw the news." I cried. "Thank you for fighting for us." Simone stared at it a moment, then typed back. "This fight isn't over, but it's finally public." A second later, another message appeared, from a number she didn't recognize. "Monarch buried more than just passenger lists. I have the documents. We need to talk." Simone stopped walking. Her eyes narrowed, a new lead, a deeper layer, and perhaps the biggest twist yet. She started typing. Where and when? The reply came instantly. "Tonight, Midtown. Bring no one." Simone glanced over her shoulder. The system had cracked open, but the roots went deeper than anyone expected. And she wasn't backing down. The old subway tunnel beneath Midtown was colder than Simone expected. The fluorescent light flickered overhead as she descended the last steps, her heels clicking against concrete. No cell signal, no surveillance. Exactly as the message said. A figure stood in the shadows near the maintenance door. Male, mid-40s, in a black hoodie and jeans. He held a brown envelope in one hand and a trembling flashlight in the other. "You came alone?" he asked, voice rough from nerves. "I don't trust anyone easily," Simone replied, "and you didn't sign your name." The man stepped closer into the light. "Name's Jared Quinn. I used to work IT security for Monarch Skis until I started asking the wrong questions." Simone's eyes narrowed. "You're the one who messaged me. Why now?" "Because what you exposed, it's only part of it. That red file system? It's connected to a federal database, run through a contractor Monarch's been paying off. He handed her the envelope. Inside is a list of blacklisted passengers, but not just Monarchs. Delta, Arrow Cross, even Amtrak has access. And the codes, half of them are DHS overflow tags. This goes beyond racial profiling. It's surveillance, hidden in plain sight. Simone's breath caught. You're saying this was sanctioned? No, Jared said, shaking his head. It was buried, started post 9/11 as a counter-terror measure. But over time, it was used to flag anyone who looked like trouble. And for some folks, looking like trouble just means being black, or Muslim, or poor. She opened the envelope. Dozens of forms, email printouts, IP logs, and a payment trail. Names she recognized from the press, from civil complaints, even some who'd reached out to her privately. None of them had known why they were being detained, denied boarding, or humiliated in front of others. Jared lowered his voice. They'll come after me when this goes public. I just needed someone to blow the lid off. And you're the only one who didn't flinch. She studied him for a long beat. This means exposing people in Homeland Security. I know. And you're not doing this for a deal, immunity. I'm doing this because my sister was denied boarding 6 times in 1 year. She thought it was bad luck, but she was in that list. Passenger, tag, 322F, watch adjacent. They called her a threat because she attended a protest in college. That's it. Simone exhaled. The scale of it was staggering. She looked him in the eye. You did the right thing. But once this surfaces, you'll need protection. He smiled sadly. I already packed a go bag. Before they could say more, a deep rumble echoed through the tunnel. A second later, a voice called out from behind them. Don't move! They spun around. 2 men in suits were standing at the stairwell. One held a badge, the other a sidearm. Their suits looked civilian, but the posture screamed federal. Jared went pale. They found me. Simone stepped in front of him, calm, poised. Agents, if you know who I am, then you know what you're doing right now is obstruction of an ongoing federal civil rights investigation. One of the men hesitated. Simone pulled a laminated card from her coat pocket. Special Counsel Simone Everett, U.S. Department of Justice. This man is a federal whistleblower under temporary protection per Executive Order 12457. If you so much as touch him, you'll be explaining it to a judge by sunrise. The taller agent stared at her, eyes narrowing, then lowered his weapon. We'll confirm. You do that, Simone said coolly. Until then, get out of my scene. They left without another word. Jared stared at her like she'd just defused a bomb. I thought they were gonna shoot me. You don't need to worry, she said, pocketing the documents. They won't touch you, and if they do, they'll answer to the same system they helped corrupt. As they climbed the stairs together, Jared whispered, What happens next? Simone looked out at the skyline from the alley exit. Lights flickered across the city like a heartbeat. She pulled out her phone and dialed. Next, she said, we wake the entire country up. She called her office. Marla, prep a joint press conference. DOJ, FAA, and Civil Liberties Union. We go live at noon. And the charges? Marla asked on the other end. Simone's voice hardened. Systemic racial discrimination, conspiracy to violate civil rights, data misuse under the Patriot Act, and obstruction of justice. She hung up. This wasn't just about an airline anymore. It was about a broken system, and the woman determined to tear it down. The conference room at the Department of Justice overflowed with cameras, journalists, legal advisors, civil rights activists, and top-tier government officials. A sea of microphones lined the podium, each angled to catch every syllable of the speech that was about to change the public conversation. Simone Everett stood behind the podium, poised and unshaken. Her navy blue blazer was immaculate, her afro pulled into a low, elegant bun. The weight of the moment didn't show on her face. Only the fire in her voice gave it away. "Good morning," she began. "What started as a case of racial profiling on a flight from Atlanta to Seattle has unearthed something far more insidious. A coordinated system of surveillance, profiling, and discrimination that has affected hundreds of thousands of Americans." The room fell to a hush. Simone took a breath and let it hang. For over a decade, private transportation companies, under the guise of internal security, collaborated with data contractors and government loopholes to monitor, flag, and blacklist individuals, most of them people of color, immigrants, or political activists. They were humiliated, detained, sometimes even banned from flying, not for what they did, but for who they were perceived to be. She held up a red folder, the same color as the system that had wronged so many. This red file was the code name for the list that flight attendant Marcy Geller used to justify throwing a black woman's bag in the trash. That woman, Dr. Olivia Carter, was an award-winning federal policy advisor on racial justice. The crew didn't know that. But even if they had, would it have mattered? Or would she have simply been labeled difficult and dismissed again? A ripple moved through the crowd. Simone pressed on. "Since our investigation began, 17 crew members have been terminated. 3 executives at Monarch Skies have resigned. Federal charges are pending against the software firm that built the discriminatory algorithm behind the red file list. And thanks to whistleblowers like Jared Quinn, we now have a path to dismantle this system permanently." Murmurs of approval swept the room. But we're not done. This isn't just about one airline or one crew or one database. This is about a culture that tolerates profiling as a form of policy, a culture that trains workers to act on bias and punishes them only when they get caught. She looked directly into the cameras. To every passenger who was denied dignity, to every parent who had to explain to their child why they were treated differently, to every traveler who knew something felt wrong but couldn't prove it. "This is for you." Simone stepped back as the room erupted in applause. Later that day, Olivia sat beside her in the green room, watching as cable networks replayed the speech. Her expression was unreadable. "You okay?" Simone asked. Olivia nodded slowly. "Yeah, I never imagined one trash can moment would lead to this." "It wasn't just that moment," Simone said. "It was the silence that followed, the hundreds of others who swallowed it and moved on." "You didn't." Olivia's voice softened. "I was just tired. Tired of pretending not to see it. Tired of shrinking in spaces that weren't built for us." Simone smiled. "Now those spaces have to answer to us." Outside, a protest line had formed in front of Monarch Skies headquarters, peaceful but firm. Placards read, "I am not a code. Travel is a right, and justice must fly higher." A reporter caught sight of Olivia as she exited the building. "Dr. Carter, one question. What would you say to people who think this is an overreaction, that it was just a bag and a rude crew?" She paused. "I'd say you weren't the one watching your worth be tossed in a trash bin by someone paid to serve you." Silence, then scribbling. "But if even one person gets to walk on a plane and be treated with dignity because of what we did today, then it was worth it." She turned to Simone. "Let's go. There's more work to do." As they walked away, a little girl tugged her mother's sleeve nearby and pointed. "Mom, that's her. That's the woman from the story." Her mother smiled and nodded. "Yeah, baby, that's her." This story isn't just fiction. It echoes the lived realities of millions of people who face discrimination every day in places where dignity should be standard, not a privilege. If this story moved you, challenged you, or made you reflect, support our channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your engagement helps us bring more stories to life that spotlight injustice, resilience, and the power of truth. Let's keep this conversation alive. Together we can build a world where fairness flies higher than fear.